First contact. The emergency pod hurtled through Vishera's atmosphere, its heat shields glowing orange against the violet sky. Inside, Specialist Rice Adams gripped the manual controls, fighting to maintain a trajectory that wouldn't end with him smeared across the planet's surface. Mayday, Mayday. This is Specialist Adams of the Terran Diplomatic Corps. My ship has been compromised. Emergency landing on Vishera. Coordinates. Race punched in the last known location before the pod's communication system died with a spark and a plume of acrid smoke. The forest canopy rushed up to meet him, a sea of iridescent blue-green foliage that looked deceptively soft until the pod crashed through it. Branches snapped like gunshots as the vessel carved a destructive path downward. Ray's braced for impact, the crash webbing digging into his shoulders as the pod slammed into the ground and skidded to a halt. Silence followed, broken only by the hiss of cooling metal and Rice's labored breathing. Blood trickled from a gash above his eyebrow, and his ribs screamed in protest as he unbuckled himself. The mission had gone sideways before it even began. The Terran Diplomatic Corps had sent him to establish first formal contact with the Visherians, an avian species that had only recently achieved spaceflight. Initial scans had shown a civilization on the brink of interstellar travel, and Earth wanted to establish friendly relations before other, less benevolent species got the same idea. Now, Rice was stranded with a damaged emergency transmitter, minimal supplies, and no idea if the rest of his team had survived whatever had attacked their ship in orbit. The pod door groaned as Rice forced it open, wincing at the pain in his side. Probably cracked ribs, he thought. Reaching for the medkit, he injected a general-purpose painkiller and pressed a regenerative patch over the cut on his forehead. Vishera's air hit him like a wall of humid heat, carrying scents of unfamiliar vegetation and the faint metallic tang that sometimes accompanied worlds with high mineral content. The forest around him towered at least 50 meters upward, blue-green fronds creating a dense canopy that filtered the planet's twin suns into dappled patterns on the forest floor. Right, Riz muttered, checking his personal locator. Settlement should be roughly 7 kilometers in that direction. He gestured eastward, where the forest seemed to thin slightly. Assuming anyone's left to find me. He gathered what supplies he could salvage, a week's worth of emergency rations, his personal translator, a compact energy pistol, and the damaged emergency beacon, and began the trek toward the Visherian settlement. Hours passed as Rice pushed through the dense undergrowth. The twin suns began their descent, casting long shadows through the forest. As darkness fell, the vegetation around him began to glow with bioluminescence, bathing the forest in an eerie blue light. The beauty of it momentarily distracted him from his pain and predicament. As a xenobiologist by training before joining the diplomatic corps, Rice couldn't help but marvel at the intricate ecological systems on display. Glowing insects, or something like insects, flitted between luminous plants, and small creatures scurried away at his approach. A sharp cry from above snapped him back to alertness. Something was watching him from the canopy. Rice reached slowly for his energy pistol, then froze as a figure dropped to the forest floor 20 meters ahead. The Visherian stood nearly 2 meters tall, with a slender frame covered in iridescent feathers that shimmered between turquoise and gold. A crest of longer feathers rose from its head, and intelligent yellow eyes regarded Rice with what he recognized as wariness. She, if his briefing on Visherian physiology was correct, carried a spear-like weapon that glowed with a soft blue light. Rice raised his empty hand slowly. "I come in peace," he said, knowing his translator would convert his words to the melodic whistling language of the Visherians. The alien's head tilted, her crest flaring with surprise. "You speak." Her voice, translated back, sounded musical even through the device's mechanical rendering. "I'm Specialist Rice Adams of Earth. My ship was damaged. I'm here on a diplomatic mission to your people." The Visherian's feathers rippled in what Rice recalled was a sign of skepticism. The Star People were not expected for another cycle of moons. She kept her weapon raised. "You bleed like the ground creatures. Are you prey? Rice managed a smile despite the pain in his ribs. No, I'm not prey. I'm a visitor, a diplomat. My species looks different from yours, but we're also sentient. More Visharians dropped from the canopy, surrounding Rice with weapons drawn. All bore similar iridescent plumage, though with variations in pattern and color. He crashed in the Shadowclaw's hunting ground. One whispered, feathers flattened in obvious fear. How did he survive the crossing? The Shadowclaw sleeps after feeding, another replied. The visitor had fortune on his wings. Rice stored this information away. Something called a Shadowclaw apparently posed a significant threat, useful to know for future reference. The first Visharian, clearly the leader, stepped forward. I am Sarai, hunt leader of Nest Haven. You will come with us before darkness fully claims the forest. The Shadowclaw hunts in true dark. Riz nodded, relieved he wouldn't have to spend the night alone in an unfamiliar forest with an apparently dangerous predator prowling about. Thank you. I'm injured and would appreciate medical attention if possible. Sarai's crest raised slightly in what might have been surprise. You are wounded and yet crossed the western forest. Perhaps you are not as fragile as you appear. The Visharians formed a protective circle around Rice as they moved swiftly through the forest, following paths invisible to his eyes. Within an hour, they'd reached a massive clearing where the Visharian settlement sprawled before them. Nest Haven lived up to its name. Hundreds of dome-shaped structures woven from luminescent fibers perched in the upper branches of enormous trees surrounding the clearing. Suspended walkways connected the dwellings, and Visharians glided between different levels on leathery wing membranes stretched between their arms and torsos. In the center of the clearing stood a collection of ground structures, presumably for visitors or activities that couldn't be conducted in the treetops. A high wall of interwoven living plants surrounded the entire settlement, glowing brightly in the gathering darkness. The wall keeps the Shadowclaw out, Sarai explained, noting Rice's interest. It fears the light. As they entered the settlement, Visharians gathered to stare at the strange alien in their midst. Rice heard whistling exclamations of surprise and fear, saw feathers flattening and crests rising in response to his presence. Many of my people have never seen a being from beyond the sky, Sarai said. You are the first to walk among us. I'm honored, Rice replied, trying to ignore the increasing pain in his ribs as the painkiller began to wear off. My mission was to establish peaceful contact with your people. It seems I've achieved that, if not in the way my superiors intended. Sarai led him to one of the ground structures, a circular building with a domed roof that glowed with the same bioluminescence as the forest plants. Our healer will attend to your wounds, she said. Then you will meet with the Nest Council to explain your presence here. The interior of the healing house was surprisingly advanced, with technologies that seemed to blend organic and mechanical components in ways Rice hadn't seen before. The healer, a Visharian with silver-edged feathers and gentle hands, examined his injuries with careful precision. Broken bone cage. The healer whistled, using Rice's translator. And head wound. You are fortunate the Shadowclaw did not find you. What exactly is this Shadowclaw everyone keeps mentioning? Rice asked as the healer applied a gel-like substance to his ribs that immediately began to numb the pain. The healer's feathers flattened against his body. Death that walks on 6 legs. Hunter in darkness. Guardian of the western forest. He applied a different substance to Rice's forehead. No one crosses its territory in lives. You were blessed by the Sky Mother. Before Rice could ask more questions, Sarai returned with an older Visharian, whose once bright feathers had faded to pale aquamarine with age. This is Elder Tavi, Sarai introduced, head of the Nest Council. Elder Tavi's crest rose and fell in what Rice recognized as a formal greeting. Star visitor, he whistled, your arrival is unexpected, but not unwelcome. Our seers have long spoken of the day when beings from beyond would walk among us. Rice attempted to bow, wincing as his ribs protested. Thank you for your hospitality, Elder. I regret the circumstances of my arrival. Rest now, Tavi said. Tomorrow, when both suns rise, we will speak of why you have come to Vishara and what you seek from the nesting people. As the elder and Sarai departed, Rays settled onto the surprisingly comfortable organic bed the healer had prepared. Through a window, he could see the bioluminescent wall glowing brightly against the complete darkness of the night. Beyond it, he knew, lay the forest and the mysterious shadow claw that seemed to terrify these otherwise confident people. Despite his exhaustion, Rise's scientist mind raced with questions. What was this apex predator that could frighten an entire civilization? How had a species evolved to fear darkness when most predators on Earth were nocturnal, making night the safest time for primitive humans? As sleep finally claimed him, Rise's last thought was that he might have stumbled upon something far more interesting than a standard. Into the shadows. Rise awoke to the sound of melodic whistling outside his chamber. His ribs felt better. Whatever the Visharian healer had applied had accelerated his body's natural healing process. The cut on his forehead had already sealed into a thin pink line. Sarai entered, her feathers catching the morning light filtering through the translucent walls. The suns have risen, star visitor. The council awaits. Rice followed her through the settlement, acutely aware of the curious stares from Visharians going about their morning routines. Young ones with fluffy down instead of sleek feathers pointed and chirped questions to their caretakers. The council chamber sat at the center of the ground complex, a circular room with a domed ceiling painted with what appeared to be a star map. 7 elders, including Tabi, perched on curved seats arranged in a semicircle. Reese stood before them, straightening his torn uniform as best he could. Specialist Rise Adams of Earth, Elder Tevi began. Tell us why your people seek the nesting ones. For the next hour, Reese explained the Terran Diplomatic Corps' mission of peaceful contact and cultural exchange. He described Earth's policy of respecting indigenous rights and technological development paths, and their desire to establish trade and knowledge sharing with species ready for interstellar relations. Our scans detected your recent achievements in spaceflight, Riss concluded. We believe the time is right for our peoples to meet formally. The council members whistled among themselves, their translator rendered discussions filling Rise's ears with overlapping voices. Why did your vessel crash? Asked a female elder with rust-colored feather tips. I don't know, Rise admitted. Something attacked us in orbit. My emergency pod was launched before I could identify the aggressor. This caused a fresh wave of agitated whistling. Others seek what lies beneath our forests, Elder Tavi said grimly. They do not ask. They take. Rise frowned. Mining corporations. Raiders? They come in great metal birds that tear the earth, another elder explained. They have appeared 3 times in recent cycles. Each time, they take soil and rock samples from beyond our walls, then vanish before we can approach. Prospectors, Riz muttered. Illegal ones, by the sound of it. He straightened. My mission is different, but to complete it and report these violations, I need to recover equipment from my crash site. My emergency beacon was damaged in the landing. Elder Tavi's crest flattened. Your pod lies in the Shadowclaw's territory. None returned from those woods after dark. I survived crossing it yesterday, Race pointed out. By fortune alone, Sarai interjected from her position by the door. The Shadowclaw had fed. It was not hunting. Rice considered his options. Without a functioning beacon, his team, if they'd survived, wouldn't know where to find him. Standard protocol would give them 3 days to attempt rescue before retreating and reporting to Terran Command. I need to try, he said firmly. With your permission, I'll depart immediately and return before nightfall. The council conferred silently, communicating through subtle shifts in feather patterns that Race couldn't interpret. Finally, Elder Tavi spoke. We cannot stop you, Star Visitor. But know this, the forest belongs to the Shadowclaw. It has claimed countless lives of our people. Even our bravest hunters venture there only in groups, only in brightest daylight, and only when necessity demands. Riz nodded. I understand the risk. Thank you for your concern. Sarai stepped forward. I will guide him to the forest edge. Beyond that, may the Sky Mother watch over him." An hour later, Race stood at the western edge of the settlement, the massive bioluminescent wall looming before him. Sarai had provided him with a pack containing water, preserved fruits, and a small glowing orb. "Light crystal," she explained. "It will shine for 1-day cycle. The Shadow Claw dislikes the light, but it will not save you if it is hungry." Rez checked his energy pistol. "What can you tell me about this creature? Size? Weaknesses?" Sarai's feathers rippled with what his translator interpreted as grim amusement. "Twice the height of you at the shoulder. 6 legs with claws that can slice through our hardest woods. Hide like stone. Eyes that see heat. It hunts by sound, and the pulse of life in your veins." She tilted her head. "Its weakness. It has none that we have found in 1,000 years. Encouraging," Rez muttered. "How do your hunters survive encounters?" "They die with honor," Sarai answered simply. "Or they are fortunate, and it has already fed." She gestured to a small gate in the wall. "Your path lies there. Follow the destruction your pod created. Return before both suns touch the horizon." Riz nodded his thanks and stepped through the gate. The forest immediately enveloped him, its canopy filtering the sunlight into dappled patterns. Unlike the previous evening, the plants weren't glowing, their bioluminescence apparently activated only in darkness. He found the trail of broken vegetation his pod had created and followed it backward, moving as quietly as possible through the underbrush. Every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves seemed magnified in the otherwise silent forest. 2 hours into his journey, Riz noticed something odd. The forest had gone completely still. No small creatures scurried in the undergrowth. No flying beings darted between branches. It was as if the entire ecosystem was holding its breath. Instinctively, Rice froze, his hand moving to his pistol. He scanned the surrounding foliage, looking for any sign of movement. Nothing obvious presented itself, but the hairs on the back of his neck stood up. Something was watching him. A low rumble vibrated through the forest floor, so deep he felt it in his chest, more than heard it with his ears. Slowly, deliberately, Race turned toward the sound. 20 meters away, partially concealed by the iridescent foliage, crouched the largest predator he had ever seen. The Shadow Claw lived up to Sarai's description, a massive 6-limbed creature with a hide that resembled black volcanic stone, veined with lines of pulsing red energy. Its head bore a crown of bony protrusions, and 6 eyes glowed amber in the shadowed forest. The creature was injured. A large metal spike, clearly not of Visharian design, protruded from its shoulder, leaking a viscous fluid that glowed faintly on the forest floor. Despite the obvious pain, the predator remained focused on Rice, its muscles tensed for attack. Rice's diplomatic and scientific training kicked in. Running would trigger a chase response. Firing his pistol might only anger it if its hide was as tough as it looked. Instead, he slowly crouched, making himself appear smaller, and avoided direct eye contact, a submissive posture that had proven effective with apex predators on multiple worlds. "Easy," he murmured, knowing the creature wouldn't understand his words, but might respond to his calm tone. "I'm not a threat." The Shadow Claw tilted its head, clearly puzzled by this prey that neither fled nor attacked. It took a tentative step forward, then stopped with a growl as the movement shifted the metal spike in its flesh. Rice recognized an opportunity. As a xenobiologist, he had treated injured wildlife on a dozen worlds. This was undoubtedly the most dangerous creature he'd ever considered approaching, but if he could help it, he might avoid becoming its next meal. "You're hurt," he said softly, slowly reaching for his pack. "I might be able to help with that." The Shadow Claw growled again, but remained still as Rez carefully withdrew the medkit he'd salvaged from his pod. Moving with deliberate slowness, he placed the kit on the ground and opened it, revealing the medical tools inside. "This will hurt," he warned, extracting a pair of medical forceps and a tube of regenerative gel. "But you'll feel better afterward." Heart pounding, Reyes took one step forward, then another. The Shadow Claw watched him, its 6 eyes tracking his every move. 10 meters separated them now. Then 5. The massive predator could cover that distance in a single bound if it chose to attack. 3 meters away, Reyes stopped and slowly extended his hand, palm up, in a universal gesture of peace. The Shadow Claw sniffed the air, then, to Reyes' astonishment, lowered its massive head to inspect his outstretched hand. Its breath was hot against his skin, carrying the metallic scent he'd noticed when he first landed. One careful step closer, and Reyes could now see the wound clearly. The spike appeared to be from an automated mining probe, the kind used by unscrupulous corporations for illegal resource assessment. "Someone's been trespassing," Reyes murmured. "And you got in their way." The Shadow Claw rumbled, a sound that vibrated through Reyes' chest. Slowly, incredibly, it shifted its position to expose the wounded shoulder more clearly, almost as if it understood Reyes' intentions. With trembling hands, Reyes gripped the metal spike. "This will hurt," he warned again, then pulled firmly and steadily. The spike slid free with a wet sound, and the Shadow Claw roared, a deafening cry that surely carried to the Visharian settlement. Reyes quickly applied the regenerative gel to the wound, watching as it foamed and sealed the injury. "There," he said, stepping back. "That should help." The Shadow Claw shook itself, testing the wounded shoulder, its 6 eyes fixed on Reyes, with what he could only interpret as curiosity. Then, without warning, it leaned forward and ran a rough tongue across Reyes' face. Reyes stood frozen, caught between terror and amazement. The predator sniffed him thoroughly, then settled onto its haunches, watching him expectantly. "Well," Reyes said with a nervous laugh, "I guess we're friends now." As if in response, the Shadow Claw rose and turned, taking a few steps before looking back at Reyes. The message was clear: follow me. Against every instinct for self-preservation, Reyes followed the apex predator deeper into the forest. Within minutes, they reached his crashed pod, the metal shell already being reclaimed by the vibrant vegetation. The Shadow Claw waited patiently as Reyes salvaged what he could: a functional emergency beacon, spare power cells, and his scientific equipment. As he worked, he noticed the creature watching him with intelligent interest, its 6 eyes tracking his movements with unmistakable comprehension. "You're a lot smarter than the Visharians give you credit for, aren't you?" Reyes asked, securing the last of his equipment. The Shadow Claw rumbled, almost like a cat's purr, but deeper, more resonant. Then it tensed, head swiveling toward the eastern edge of the forest. Its bony crests extended, and a warning growl built in its throat. "What is it?" Reyes asked, following its gaze. At first, he saw nothing, but then movement caught his eye. Metallic glints among the trees, too angular to be natural. Automated mining drones. At least 5 of them, cutting a path through the forest toward what appeared to be a small clearing beyond. The Shadow Claw's territory was being invaded by the same machines that had wounded it. "They're back," Reyes murmured, "looking for whatever's valuable enough to risk illegal operations." The Shadow Claw's growl deepened, its body tensing for attack. Reyes placed a restraining hand on its flank, surprised when the creature actually hesitated. "No," he said firmly. "You'll just get hurt again. Let me handle this." To his astonishment, the predator subsided, watching him with what appeared to be trust, a concept Reyes wouldn't have associated with an apex predator mere hours ago. Checking his chrono, Reyes realized the day was advancing. He needed to return to the Visharian settlement before nightfall as promised. But first, he activated his scanner, taking readings of the mining drones and their activities. Evidence would be crucial in reporting this violation of planetary protection laws. "I have to go back," he told the Shadow Claw, feeling slightly foolish for talking to it like a sentient being. "But I'll return. Those machines don't belong here." The predator watched him for a long moment, then rose and padded silently into the undergrowth, disappearing from view despite its massive size. As the suns began their descent toward the horizon, Ray's hurried back toward the Visharian settlement, his mind racing with implications. The Shadowclaw was far more intelligent than the Visharians believed. Someone was conducting illegal mining operations, and somehow he'd formed a bond with a creature that had terrorized an entire civilization for generations. He reached the wall just as the first sun touched the horizon, finding a search party of anxious Visharians preparing to venture out in search of him. "You live," Sarai exclaimed, her crest rising in surprise. "We heard the Shadowclaws roar. We thought surely you had fallen." Rice smiled. "It's a long story, but you might want to reconsider what you think you know about your forest guardian." Behind him, from deep within the forest, came a resonant call, not a roar of aggression, but almost a greeting. The Visharians froze in fear, but Race turned and raised his hand in acknowledgement. "What magic is this?" Elder Tavi demanded, his feathers flattening in alarm. "The beast calls to you as to a nestmate." "Not magic," Race replied. "Understanding, and we have much to discuss about your planet's future." The bond. The council chamber erupted in chaos as Rice finished recounting his encounter with the Shadowclaw. Elders whistled and chirped over each other, crests rising and falling in agitation. Elder Tavi finally raised his wings for silence. "You claim our ancient enemy, the devourer of our hunters, allowed you to touch it, to heal it." His tone conveyed deep skepticism, and that it guided you to your crashed vessel. Riz nodded. "I know it sounds incredible. I can hardly believe it myself." He activated his data pad, displaying the scans he'd taken. "But there's something more urgent to discuss. These are automated mining drones, manufactured by Stellar Extraction Corporation, a company with a history of exploiting pre-Alliance worlds for resources." The images showed the drones cutting through the forest, taking core samples and marking trees with laser designations. "They're preparing for a larger operation," Rice continued. "My guess is they've detected significant mineral deposits and are preparing for extraction before Veshera receives official Alliance protection." Sarai leaned forward, her feathers rippling with concern. "These metal birds, they are what wounded the Shadowclaw." "Yes, and they'll do worse when the full mining operation begins. They'll strip entire sections of forest, displace wildlife, and potentially damage your ecosystem beyond repair." Elder Tavi's crest flattened. "Our seers spoke of this, the age when the forest would scream and the earth would bleed. We believed it metaphor, not prophecy." "There's more," Race said. "The Shadowclaw. It's far more intelligent than you realize. It understood I was trying to help it. It deliberately showed me the mining drones." He hesitated, then added, "I believe it's been protecting the forest from these incursions, not just hunting for sport." The youngest council member, a Vesharian with vibrant blue-green plumage, spoke up. "Our oldest records speak of a time when our ancestors communed with the forest guardians. Before the Great Severing, when blood was spilled on both sides." "What severed this connection?" Rice asked. The elders exchanged glances. "It is not spoken of to outsiders." Elder Tabi said finally, "But perhaps you should know." He gestured, and a holographic display activated in the center of the chamber, showing ancient Vesharian pictographs. "Before our people took to the air and built nests in the high places, we dwelled among the trees as groundwalkers," Tavi explained. "The forest guardians, the Shadowclaws, shared the land with us in balance. Our ancestors could speak to them through thought, a connection of minds that transcended words." The hologram shifted, showing Vesharians and Shadowclaws side by side. "Then came the first sky visitors," Tavi continued grimly. "They offered wonders beyond imagining, metals that would not break, lights that never dimmed. In exchange, they wanted only stones from deep in our earth, stones that glowed with inner fire. Probably uranium or similar radioactive elements," Raze murmured. "Our ancestors agreed, not understanding the value of what they traded. The visitors dug deep wounds in the land, taking more and more. The forest guardians warned that this violated the ancient balance, but the allure of new technology silenced wisdom. The hologram showed conflict. Shadow claws attacking Visharians, Visharians using unfamiliar weapons against the predators. When the guardians tried to stop the destruction, our ancestors used the visitors' weapons against them. Many guardians fell. The survivors retreated deeper into the forests, their minds closed to ours forever. The connection was severed. Rice absorbed this information with growing understanding. So the Shadow Claws were once partners, not enemies, and when they turned aggressive, it was to protect the land itself. "This is ancient history," Sarai interjected. "The Shadow Claw has hunted our people for countless generations. Whatever alliance existed is long dead." "Perhaps not," Ray said thoughtfully. "The one I encountered could have killed me easily. Instead, it recognized my intention to help and responded in kind." He looked at each council member in turn. What if the connection could be restored? Elder Tivi's crest rose slightly. "You believe this possible?" "I don't know," Reyes admitted. "But there's one way to find out. I need to return to the forest." "Madness," Sarai exclaimed. "You survived one encounter by fortune alone." "Not fortune," Reyes insisted. "Understanding. The Shadow Claw and I formed a bond. I think it will remember me." The council debated among themselves, their discussion too rapid and nuanced for Rise's translator to fully capture. Finally, Elder Tati addressed him. "You may attempt this folly, Star Visitor, but not alone. Sarai will accompany you to the forest edge. If, and only if." Reluctantly, Sarai followed, though her body language conveyed extreme tension. The other hunters remained at the gate, bows half drawn. From the shadows between two massive trees, the Shadow Claw emerged. In daylight, its black hide showed intricate patterns where the red energy lines pulsed beneath the surface. The wound Rice had treated was already healing, only a faint mark visible where the metal spike had penetrated. "By the Sky Mother," Sarai whispered, her voice trembling. "It allows your approach." Rice walked steadily toward the massive predator, hand extended. "Hello again," he said softly. "I brought a friend." The Shadow Claw's 6 eyes fixed on Sarai, who stood frozen in terror several meters behind Rice. It growled, a deep sound that vibrated through the ground. "She won't hurt you," Rice assured it. "She's just afraid. Her people have forgotten what yours once were to them." To his amazement, the Shadow Claw seemed to understand. It lowered its massive head and stepped toward Rice, butting against his outstretched hand like an oversized cat seeking attention. The gesture was so unexpected, so contrary to everything the Visharians believed about the creature, that Sarai made a strangled sound of disbelief. "It's okay," Rice said, stroking the rough hide. "Come closer." Slowly, Sarai took one hesitant step, then another. The Shadow Claw watched her approach, its posture alert but not aggressive. When she was 5 meters away, it rumbled again, but remained beside Rice. "Extend your hand. Palm up," Rice instructed, "just like I'm doing." With visible effort, Sarai raised a trembling hand. The Shadow Claw studied her for a long moment, then, incredibly, moved forward to sniff her outstretched fingers. Sarai's crest rose in astonishment, her fear temporarily overwhelmed by wonder. "Impossible," she breathed. "Our histories say they cannot be approached without bloodshed." "Your histories are incomplete," Rice suggested. "The Shadow Claw remembers the time before the Great Severing. It's been waiting for someone to remember too." The creature made a chuffing sound, then turned and nudged Rice insistently, looking toward the deeper forest. "I think it wants us to follow," Rice said. Sarai's feathers rippled with alarm. "Into its hunting grounds. We would be at its mercy." "We already are."